Too hot for TV.
Welcome back to Doctor Who Too Hot for TV. We are the podcast that looks at all things Doctor Who Extended Universe. Today, in a break from our regularly scheduled programming, aka what I said at the end of last episode, I'm pleased to present to you the Telos Publishing and Real-Time Pictures panel from the Whooverville event last weekend in Derby, featuring myself, David J. Howe, Keith Barnfather and Robert Dick. The panel celebrates 25 years of Telos Publishing and 40 years of Real-Time Pictures, as well as jumping into the book I've recently written for Telos, Doctor Who, Myths and Legends, the Real-Time Pictures story. The panel wasn't recorded professionally, but Richie Morgan has done his best to clean up the audio, and I'm very grateful for him for that. So please excuse any howling mics or rustling shirts or anything like that the mics may have picked up too. I hope you enjoy.
Too hot for TV.
So please welcome Rob Real-Time Pictures, Keith Barnfather and Robert Dick. And from Telos Publishing, David J. Howe and the
Hey, that's as good as it'll get. Shall we
That's
get
the introduction. That's brilliant. Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
Oh, who's hosting this panel, by the way?
If only we had an interviewer.
Yeah.
If only we had an experienced interviewer.
If only we had one. This is so good. David, come on, you do it.
Hello. Thank you very much for everybody for coming along here. It's really appreciated. It's lovely to see you through the glare of the lights. It's always a bit weird. So, we're actually celebrating this year two significant anniversaries. So that the first significant anniversary is that, and it's quite hard to believe this, that it's 40 years since this man sitting next to me had the bright idea to go and interview a couple of his Doctor Who mates on VHS tape and sell them through the fan club.
Somehow you made that sound like a complete disaster.
It wasn't a complete disaster, but it's quite incredible. It's 40 years ago. The other significant anniversary is that it's 25 years since this idiot decided that it would be a good idea to release some Doctor Who novellas in book form, and Telos Publishing was created. So it's 40 years of Real-Time Pictures and 25 years of Telos Publishing.
So why did it take you so long to get started, Dave?
Why did it take me so long? Well, because I needed somebody to go before me, make all the mistakes, make an idiot of themselves. And then I could come along and say, no, this is how you do it. So it's quite apposite, I think, that on the 40th anniversary of Real-Time Pictures, we've released a book, which is here, this lovely book, Myths and Legends, or Myths and Legends, which is probably better, which is celebrating 40 years of Real-Time Pictures. So where do we start? I suppose every idea starts with an idea. Every book starts with an idea. And I think on this one, the idea basically came from you, Keith.
Yeah.
So why did you decide that it would be a good idea to have a book all about Real-Time Pictures?
Well, that was a bit of us, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was just us. In the pub?
In the pub.
Somewhere.
It happened in lockdown, didn't it, really? And
You were in the pub in lockdown?
Yeah, don't tell anybody. Shh. We were at the Tory Party conference. In lockdown, Keith started posting little sort of retrospectives of various myth makers and dramas, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I sort of said to him, you should write a book, and he said, don't be silly, I haven't got the time. And he said to me, you should write a book, and I said, I haven't got the time. And then I was speaking to my brother, and I was talking to Keith about doing a Real-Time book, and he was like, well, what would it be about? And then 2 hours later, I was still talking about Real-Time, so I messaged Keith back and said, I'm going to write a book. And here we are, 5 years later.
5 years later, yeah. It's funny from my point of view. Looking back, you just don't really think that what you've done has that much merit. You just got on with it and did it. And it's only really other people putting it in perspective that sort of makes you realise you were right. You've done nothing of merit, and there's no... It has helped me so much put my life into some kind of perspective and the history of Real-Time. I mean, when I started, I wasn't thinking about anything other than this would be quite nice to sort of make some interviews. I started real time for corporate and business television after I left Channel 4, as most of you will or already have read in the book. And it was to go out on my own, run a production company. That was the most important thing. But this was a really nice sideline to do. And it as I've getting through it really quickly, it wasn't until I did Ian Marter's Mythmakers that I started to realise that actually there was more to this than just doing interviews and releasing them and having fun, that it actually had merit as well.
And to me, I was a fan of those releases. So, like, I've been collecting Mythmakers my entire life. I hadn't seen them all, but I have now several times. But it was like, that's the history of our TV show. It's our cultural heritage sounds like a massive phrase, but it's true. The whole of classic Doctor Who is documented there. You know, be it a 30-minute interview with Michael Wisher or 2 hours with Matthew Waterhouse or something like that. The whole of classic Doctor Who's there, and I think it's important that not only that it exists, but that we celebrate it, because if it was just 3 tapes released in the 80s, okay, we probably wouldn't be talking about it now, but what Keith's done over the last 40 years is incredible to chronicle the history of the show.
Always to bear in mind that if it hadn't have been for all of you guys buying them, it wouldn't be here. So I often say that it isn't if you're going to call it a success story, it's not about me, it's about all of us, because you're the guys that buy it. It's the only program in the world that has the support that you guys give. So if my success, if there is success, is your success as well, if that doesn't sound odd. Can I ask you, Robert, as a sort of odd aside, how did you view what Real Time did and was before you started working on it?
I put it in the player and I pressed play and that, and I watched them. Oh, as I see, yeah, no, wait, funny, eh?
Anyway, David.
The same as when I lived in Scotland, I saw Sophie's ones, brilliant, they're diving around now, and some of them are straightforward interviews, but you got the ones that are a bit more unusual. And I watched them several times. Hence, you would think you wouldn't necessarily watch someone being interviewed over and over again, but I remember things like the Sophie's Club. You're so right about things like the Ian Marter thing, of like you documented something, and if you hadn't done that, that isn't captured, not in that way. I mean, had it actually come out by the time they died?
He passed away, I think, about 3 or 4 weeks. 5 weeks. Yeah, after we interviewed him, and then I asked the family, would they object to us? Would it be upsetting, to release it? And they said no, Ian would have wanted that, And it went out, I suppose, in the end, probably about 6 to 8 weeks after he passed away.
And you can, people can come to these kind of things, we can say, we had the experience of watching, say, Colin Baker on stage while you with, but it's not documented. And I know that now you get DVD extras and Blu-ray features and the Chris Chapman documentaries and all these things, but when you started, they didn't exist. People didn't do that kind of thing. So I'm not saying, Keith, you created the world of DVD extras.
Go on.
There is a lineage, though, isn't
there? There's an absolute, and because you were doing that long ago, there are things like an hour long, 40 minutes, of Ian Marter, which simply, look at how often the DVD things use the same J&T thing, and it's used really well, and they've still got bits of it that they haven't used, I think, but it's that one interview, big lengthy interview, they use knowing that they could store this and use it in documentaries. But you were providing an actual package of that long before.
It sometimes, looking back, is when I started Mythmakers, the BBC were only releasing Doctor Who on VHS tapes, and it was just the episodes. So what we were doing then was providing something totally different. And my thoughts at the time were that it was something that maybe fandom conventions, like now, there's a convention every week almost, but back then they were fairly irregular in the 80s. So you'd perhaps have a convention 2 or 3 times a year.
You invented them as well, didn't you? You did the very first Golden Roof for me.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, it's all my fault.
But also, not everybody could get to them, you know?
But that's it. So my logic was not only for people who are regular convention goers, was for fans who lived all over the country who didn't travel, didn't do conventions. It would be the chance to see the actors who worked in the program. Of course, now, because New Who has been almost over-interviewed all the actors on all of the programming that's gone out on the BBC and all of the VAM and everything that exists on the Blu-rays. That's one of the reasons why I haven't really got into the new Who as doing Mythmakers, because I don't really think, perhaps I think we've done what we needed to do, and I think that's now being done by, shall we say, the next generation. That doesn't mean that there won't be something that we do, but not to the same degree.
But when it comes to New Who, you literally had just finished watching the episode. So you could turn to BBC Three and see it being made, and while seeing it being made is interesting, I'm not entirely convinced that we need to see it the second we finish watching it. It hasn't sat in your brain and you have gone straight into, and this is why we did this and why we did that, and you haven't had a chance to think about it in any way yourself.
It's a different world we live in now.
My mum used to call it Doctor Who the autopsy, Doctor Who. But they're still on this, you know, you get an interview, say it's about Blink, and they're still on the set of Blink when they're doing it. And I think that is important stuff to document, but they haven't had time to sit with what's happened to them during the course of that thing. So this is also, a lot of your early work especially, is getting the anecdotes before they've told them to a crowd and, you know, found the punchlines and embellished. So
there was when we did, for me, the classic example of that is when we did Wendy Pabrew's Mythmakers, and we went up to, I think I'm right, it was Cardiff, and I think she was appearing in Super Ted, and John Pert, who was obviously in it as well, and Melvin Haysman, her husband at the time. And Wendy got on stage, and Nick and I, you know, sort of one fond memory is that she didn't remember anything. Now, this was because she hadn't done convention, so she hadn't had her mind sort of, you know, people focusing back on things and remembering. But the other side of it was she really didn't remember much, and Nick was going, well, that was a story where you, oh, yes, I'll tell you. And she'd tell us a bit. And, of course, now she'll go and she'll recite every story she did.
Yeah.
So I think there definitely is an element of people not reinventing the past, but shall we say, almost being told about what they did and embellishing the stories that they have. And I think one of the nice things about the early Mythmakers is you're hearing raw interviews. One of my favourite productions was when we did the Panopticon Genesis. No, the Panopticon... Destiny. The last one, Destiny, when we remastered all of the audio interviews with Tom and John and Louise and Terence... and Graham Williams. And this was the first time any of them had ever been interviewed in front of a fan audience. So what you heard from them then was totally and utterly their real memories rather than the ones that they'd been programmed with. Not intentionally, but you do. You know, you go to a convention, you all talk about it, you almost take in what other people have told you. So you start to build a story, whereas this was, and those interviews I think are wonderful.
John Pertwee's in particular, I saw Pertwee interviewed at loads of conventions, and we all know his sort of one-man show and his convention repertoire. But to hear him then, when he's sort of 3 or 4 years out of the show, and he can remember story titles and individual production days and things like that, and you're like, I've never heard John Pertwee tell these stories before, because by the time I saw him, it was 20 years later, and it was all the routine. So it's really nice to get just that little bit more detail.
And Tom going on stage for the first time and talking about, you know, doing the programme, actually filming it.
Yeah, because he's still in it at the time.
Yeah.
You get quite, over your productions, you get really interesting insights into Tom, because his Mythmakers is quite a serious production in terms, like, it's not Tom performing.
No.
It feels like he's very much an actor between jobs doing an interview. And then you get Who on Earth is Tom Baker, where it's both more real and a big performance as well.
Yes.
So it's not the Tom that anybody who saw him at conventions over the last few decades would know.
No, I agree. I mean, I think one of the nice things about Who on Earth is Tom Baker was that he and Sue actually contacted me and said, you know, Tom enjoyed doing... I didn't know how Tom would be when we did his Mythmakers, because all of you know what Tom could be like. You've all heard the stories over the years. So this was true even, I saw him in studio when they were making Doctor Who, and I knew what he could be like. So I didn't know what I would get on the day. I'd worked with him professionally on some corporate work, so that's how I managed to get him to agree to do the Mythmakers through Jackie Lane, who was his agent. So doing my job properly, I thought, well, he might come along, do the interview with Nick and just say yes and no to a degree. So I didn't know I'd get a full interview. I didn't know what I'd get. So the whole reason we got all the little sketch bits with John Levine from the story, what's the story?
Android Invasion.
Android Invasion. Glad you're here. We just wrapped it in that. So if I only got little chunks of him and Nick talking in 3 or 4 places around the location, that would be fine, because I'd package them with the... But as it was in the end, as the day went on, he got more and more involved. I remember being in the pub at lunchtime, and he was starting to ask questions and saying, actually, we could do this. I've got to talk about that. And by the end of it, he did that. It was entirely his idea to do the lovely walk-off at the end where he dissolves away. And so he says something like, I was adored once. And that, of course, has become a trademark with Tom. And that was all his idea. Yeah. And then about a month later, he contacted me and said, Sue and I, his wife, we sort of think we've got an idea for doing another documentary, which we want to do. And are you interested? What did I say? Yeah, yeah. And that was the first time I produced, and really had nothing to do with the direction or worrying about it, because we had a crew with us, and I just watched them direct it, because Sue worked for, I think, TV South at the time. So she knew what she wanted to do as a director. So, that was really... I loved Who on Earth is Tom Vegas. It's still one of my favourites.
That was one of the first ones I saw. And I don't know whether I told you this, but in the 80s and 90s, my dad worked in advertising. And somebody, it might have been you, it might have been a client, gave him that as an example of a corporate company's work.
No.
And said, have a look at this. And my dad went, oh, well, I don't understand it, but my son will like this. And
Good God. You never told me that.
So you might have met my dad.
Wow. And there's no answer to that. So what did you think when it was me basically that asked you, would you publish it?
Yes, basically it was, yeah.
What did you think?
I thought, well, it's a great idea. It fits in with what Telos does, the kind of books that we put out are kind of factual, eclectic.
It is very eclectic.
Interesting, obviously being Doctor Who, we knew there'd be a kind of a market for it, so that would be fine. But I was all for it. I thought, it's a great idea. Let's do that. The biggest issue I think we had, I think I'm right in saying, Dylan, that when you first got in touch, I can't quite remember when that was, but you'd written something like, I don't know, 250,000 words or something, and it was like, I'm only halfway through, David.
The first 4 chapters were 100,000 words.
I nearly said a rude word there, but my son said.
It was doing things like comparing the re-releases to the originals and going, this is where the new footage inserted. And I read it back and I sort of went, I'm a fan and I don't want to read this.
I made it. I don't want to read that.
Yeah, so I think I said to you something like, we need to pull it back.
Short and sharp.
We need to simplify this to get through everything. And then obviously the second version that we got was spot on. It was great. A paragraph, 4 paragraphs on each of the productions, lots of information, lots of detail. But yeah, and then the next one was, and then the next one was, and then the next one was really good. I also really liked how you broke down the releases in seasons or something, or I suppose, because there wasn't really by year or anything. It was almost like an arbitrary, where should we stop? But they're kind of bounded by the drama productions. Yeah. So each drama production's got a great big chapter on it, and then you go back into and here's the 27 individual releases that we did next kind of thing. And now here's another drama production. And
you made it sound like I had a plan.
It was nicely done. So it all kind of worked out from that perspective. But I remember being quite amused when you said, I've only written 4 chapters and I'm 100,000 words.
I kind of had to go through that to get it to where it was readable, because you've got to get all that information out. And you sort of go, well, what is the story? Because it could be quite dry, and the story is that, like Keith's passion, Doctor Who fans' passion, for documenting the show and the personal relationships with the stars of the show and things like that. So it's about that. It's not on Tuesday we went to Annika Will's house and on Wednesday we saw John Levine. It's sort of like...
Sorry.
That's your life.
That's a very strange version of that Craig David song.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. But you guys will all understand this. I mean, Robert, you'll understand this from an interviewing perspective. Keith, you get it from making a drama, editing a drama perspective. And Dylan, obviously, you're working as a producer and stuff like that. Narrative is very, very important. I've always said this whenever I'm asked to talk about, non-fiction writing and, how you do that, is I've always said that, a non-fiction book, so if you're writing a fiction book, you have a plot, you're telling a story. You've got a beginning, you've got a middle, you've got an end, you've got some characters, and you're telling a story. Writing non-fiction is exactly the same. And if you're doing an interview, if you're making a drama, if you're producing, it's exactly the same. You have a story you want to tell, you have some characters, and you have a beginning, you have a middle, and you have an end. The big difference is that in non-fiction, you can't make anything up. So if you're writing a novel, and it's same as an interview. But if you're writing a fiction piece, if it would help your narrative that your lead character was a vegetarian, well, you make him a vegetarian. If it would help that they'd had a child that died at childbirth or something horrible, that's what you give them. But if you're doing non-fiction, again, you can't do that. But you still have to have that narrative structure. And that's very important. And it's the same which Robert follows when he does interviews. It's what's my plot? What story do I want to tell in this next hour? And let's go through that with my subject and we'll make sure we've told that story. And it's the same with documentaries, drama. It's all the same. And I think that's very important in terms of getting a good book out of it, as you started to say there about that it's knocking out the stuff that's not relevant.
Yeah.
Is that relevant to my plot? No, well then it goes. It may be absolutely fascinating and no one knows it, but it still has to go because it's not relevant to my story that I'm trying to tell.
Volume 2 then.
The extended edition.
Yeah, you could do that, but I think then you'd end up with what you started with, really, and it's almost unreadable. But it's stuff that you can't really deal with. It's very, very difficult. This is in a way why we still keep finding out new stuff about Doctor Who, because there are facts out there that actually don't really fit any particular story that you might want to tell. I don't know. Jacqueline Hill having a medical report in one of the Hartnell episodes because she hurt herself on set while they were recording Space Museum or whatever it might have been. Yeah, what possible narrative story could you fit a random fact like that into where it didn't feel like a random fact that you just inserted into the story because nobody knew it? And that's the difficulty when you're doing non-fiction, is to try and use what you can, but you have to be careful because otherwise you get something that's unreadable, unwatchable, is a nonsense, doesn't have a story, doesn't make sense, doesn't have a conclusion. Where were we going with this? What's
always been important to me with Mythmakers is to make sure that the people who do the interviews are capable of. When I started,
Did that go wrong?
See Waterhouse one.
yeah, was it from then onwards? You carry on over there. That's all right. Was having an interview, and that's why I got a professional interviewer for the first two, because I didn't know a fan at that time who I thought could structurally interview and make the interview work as a piece. And Keith was great. Keith Harrison was a really good interviewer, but he didn't know Doctor Who, and he made a few little errors within the interviews for both Michael and John. That I thought, oh God, and just fate. My life seems to have been a series of events that have just seemed to slot, and I've never understood this. It just slotted into place. And I met Nick at a convention down in Southampton, and thought this guy's going to be really good for it. And then when it got to the point that I realised Nick couldn't do them anymore because he was so busy with Big Finish, and we got into a format where you all know, I'm sure, where I would interview the person and then he would do links in our office, normally in the computer by our edit suite. It just got to a point where we were doing it all the time. And I had to have a meal with him one evening, and that was really difficult to say to him, look, Nick, we can't carry on like this. And he'd got proprietorial about it. Of course he had, after, 30 years, I suppose. He'd done every Mythmakers. But he understood, and he was really good about the fact that I needed to. And it was Nick that suggested you, Robert, for Matthew.
And I always say Nick. So what happened was Nick had studied to make the time to do them.
Yeah.
And you were so pleased to get Matthew to because he'd been away in America, and
Yeah.
he kind of sort of left a lot of that behind, and then he said, yeah, he would do it, and then Nick very kindly said, now Robert interviews at conventions, and he's a friend of Matthew's, so if nothing else, it'll work for that long. So I could have come and done that and gone, well, that was all right.
But what I didn't know before that was you've been stalking me for years.
Yes.
I mean, every event I'd ever been to filming, you kept saying, once we got to know each other better, he was going, oh, I was there. And I'm going, were you? So that did, but then that led to Sophie.
Live in the same.
Yeah, and you live 5 minutes away, see, stalking.
And I'm adamant he is never ever allowed to use Matthew's suite, because Matthew's suite lives even closer to Keith's house than I do.
Yeah.
Matthew's suite lives between me and Keith.
It's true.
Sometimes I'm going into Keith's house and say, hi, Matthew, on my way past as I bump into him. But no, because he's even more convenient than I am. You're not allowed it.
Oh, right, okay, yes, sir. Yeah, no, I think actually getting a group of people to do the interviews rather than relying on one is a good move, not only creatively, but also practically, because there are times I've asked Robert, and Robert said, oh, I can't, I'm working that day. And I've been able to just go to someone else and ask them. Nick is so busy, I've not been able to ask him to do a Mythmakers for a long time. But we did manage to do Day of the Daughters a couple of years ago, which I really loved. And that was, I think, a great documentary. And because he knew Sadie and Daisy very well because of doing all the audios for Big Finish.
And the perfect person too.
Yeah, exactly. He was, and also similar life experiences with losing parents not that long ago relative to each other. They all had definitely a connection to talk about, and I think that worked really well.
And if you haven't seen that, have you got some of them?
They're here, yes. I'm not going to do a big sales thing on our products, but go and buy them.
It's genuinely.
Yes, these genuinely a Day of the Daughters I would recommend, really recommend. I mean, I don't think there's a production I'm not happy with that we've done. I don't feel we've made anything that is poor, let's put it that way. But obviously there are your favourites. Return to Devil's End, which is just a piece of history. Who on Earth is Tom Baker? Day of the Daughters, Still in the Devil's Seeds of Arador, Wartime,
One of mine.
Deimos Rising. Those that you really, really, really rate,
Ian Martyr Mythmakers.
Oh, yes, Ian Martyr's Mythmakers, yeah, which he directed. But, yeah, the book has given me a perspective, which I just would thank you, both of you, which I just would never have had without you. I just kept going. It has been a bit of a, what would you call an obstacle course, trying to work it all out.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot, didn't we? We had a lot of Zoom conversations.
We did.
Sometimes twice a day.
Sorry.
But it was just because it's one thing sort of figuring out the basic facts, and then it's sort of okay, we need to get some opinions and emotion and things and pull that out as well. So some days it'd just be like, when did you record that? Why did you do that? And other days it was more about the memories of the particular people involved and then piecing it all together. And we had a bit of a moment right towards the end, didn't we, where we realised perhaps the order wasn't quite as...
it was... this is so boring. We're just having a chat here. Who was it? Which Victor Pemberton.
Victor
Pemberton's Mythmakers, because that was going to be one person who I can't remember who it was going to be. Douglas Adams. It sort of fell by the wayside, but I kept the number aside thinking that we'd get round to it, and we never did, and suddenly there was this hole in the release schedule of Mythmaker number 11. So eventually, 12, 11, 12?
11.
11, thank you. See. And we brought the Victor Pemberton one out about a year and a half, but you were foxed by the release and thought it was and we had it in the wrong place in the releases.
Yeah, and then David has to go back and restructure them. Sorry about that.
Shuffle it all about and do everything. I mean, what's particularly nice about the book is that obviously the early releases have quite a lot of content. I mean, there's like a couple of pages or so on the early ones because there's a lot to say because it's setting it all up and it's finding your way and the mistakes and what went right, what went wrong, and then as we go through, so it becomes more and more just like a paragraph on each one, really, or half a page on each one, which is really nice. And yeah, it was odd, wasn't it? That list because I do these sorts of things. I said, well, we've got to have a listing. You know, you've done a great book here, but we need an appendix, and we've got to have a list with all the code numbers and all the stuff and the dates of release and stuff. And of course you have. It's a factual, but you got to. And that listing was so hard to pull together from Keith's files, what you had, your memories, what I documented as they came out.
Yeah.
You got another list from somewhere else that we were checking through.
I got it from Keith.
Yeah.
So it was this, and even then, I was coming back to Keith saying, why have these two got the same release number? It was that one's.
See, the difference between one of the differences between us is that David, really, you pretty much make notes on everything.
I do, yeah.
And you keep saying, me, I just fuddle through. I mean, I make what I do and I do that well. But I was never going, that's the recording note for that, I'll put that in this. I just, we did that, we've done that.
Sorry?
Was that an impression of David?
No, never to that. Never.
Yes. No, I don't talk that.
No. Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so it was fun doing it, and it was nice to kind of finally end up with something that's hopefully pretty definitive as to what came out and when. And obviously, again, strangely, it was the non-Doctor Who ones. It was like those Blake Seven ones in the middle, where it's like
those Blake
Seven ones. Well, which one was it? Jan Chapel, or whichever one it was. Did it come out on VHS? And we couldn't, because it was the point at which Keith was switching from VHS to DVD. And searching, Googling, I could not find any evidence.
And then I found the inlay.
And you found the inlay. And then you sent me the inlay. But then you kind of thought, I think I'd created it, but we never released it.
Because I never got an order from it.
And it was like this crazy little stuff that you're trying to sort through and sort out that got really, really difficult.
We spent, Dylan said, I've got like folders of stuff. I'm not so bad that I haven't kept stuff. And you just went, I'll come over. And we spent really, 3 or 4 hours, 5 hours, wasn't it? One afternoon or evening, just going through everything. And I sort of pulled this out and he went, we've got to have that.
Lots of things you didn't remember as well.
Tons of things I know.
Early logos for the company, unused designs with videos.
We tried to include as much as we could in the book, so that was good. And then, of course, the whole American operation was another cause of kind of head scratching. It's like trying to put in order what was released in America and when and in what formats and by who. And how did that happen? And
see, I'm falling asleep listening to it, let alone having to write it up. You know, it's just not my nature.
But it's all good.
It's wonderful doing it. I'm so grateful for it to be done. But with me, it's always just what's the next thing.
Yeah,
it's.
But then you get the difference as well between the different myth makers, Dylan, and it's like you'll get Victor Pemberton, and Keith's got a bit of paper saying we recorded Victor Pemberton. That's it. And then you get Ian Martin, which I did, and Dylan says, what have you got? And I've got an entire file, and you pull it out, and it's got on 3 p.m. on the 27th of November, I wrote to Victor, and at 4:27 we recorded this scene. And it's like, my notes are that kind of detailed. It's insane.
There was recce pictures, and there was Ian's letter as well, saying, thanks for a lovely time.
And all sorts of
really
stuff.
Great stuff to have.
But, I kind of documented everything, and other people just didn't even know they'd done it.
Well, there was a thing of going through Keith's stuff, and he was like, I don't remember doing this. It's like, well, you checked. There's a picture of you there.
Oh, I was there.
We were there. That's where we went. Yeah. No, I think it's come out. It's a great book, and there's a lot of information in there, isn't there? There's a lot.
I think I'm very pleased with it. I'm very grateful to both of you for all the work you put in on it.
Oh, bless you.
It's just I mean, you know, when I started, there was no way that I would have thought I would ever either arrange my own interview and also have a book about what essentially what I've done, because real time is me and Anastasia, really. And that's it. Yeah. Crazy.
Seen your myth makers yet, but what was it like to sit? I know you did that as a live thing, so I mean, it's slightly different.
Yeah. Well, Sophie is a really good friend. I mean, I think in this business, you make acquaintances. You make lots and lots of acquaintances, not necessarily friends. I mean, Phil's here, who designed the set for Still in the Devil Seeds of Arador, and he's a friend. But a lot of the time, it's acquaintances. You meet people, they pass through your life. But Sophie has become a really close friend as well. You know, we meet, we talk about all the things in life friends do. So having her interview me was, if it hadn't have been Robert, because the logistics, we talked about you doing it, but the logistics of this event, did anybody go up to Allendale for that event? As a matter of interest. It was Neil Cole's event about a month back, the Seek Locate. Just a really good event. To make it work, because it was going to be a fairly low-key, not big fees for it, the only way I could sort of work out how to support Neil with the event and do some myth makers there was basically to cheat it. So there was no fee for me. Neil did it, and Rob Alsop came up and did it as a favour, you know, to come out as another mate. And Sophie came and interviewed both Neil and I. And the nice thing about that is having Sophie interview me, because she's such a good friend. I just forgot about the fact that there was an audience. It was just us chatting. And I don't think I'd have been too worried in front of her. You've got to hope that the people who are in a room watching you do an interview are relatively interested in what you've got to say. Otherwise, why would they be there, right?
Well, quiet room to have a snooze, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that's how you go. Nice and quiet in that theatre. And I just enjoyed chatting to her. Now, whether I can't be objective about an interview with me, so I don't know. But yeah, you will. Yeah. But hopefully, you know, it's gone down well.
But Sophie is a really good addition to the host, because especially when she's doing Friends and people she worked with in the 80s, you get a different sort of interview. Like with you with Matthew, you know Matthew, and so you get a more personal interview, and you know where to ask the right questions and the questions that a normal interviewer probably wouldn't ask.
It's Sophie's so amazingly relaxed. She never hooks. No, I mean, the Simon Williams one that they did.
Yeah, that's classic.
I described it as being, it was like they were sitting, catching up in a coffee shop, and we just happened to be sitting at the next table.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't, they were having...
I think we were a bit like that as well. It was just like us having a chinwag, you know.
And she's also brilliant at things. Like every now and again, if she's doing something, I'll go, I bet she won't know about something that I know because I'm a Doctor Who nerd. And I'll say, oh, by the way, this is something that... And sometimes I hear her bring this up as if, oh, right, oh, does that mean that? And as if this thought has just occurred to her. And I was like, yeah, but she's had that sitting, waiting to kind. She makes it sound like it's just occurred to her. And I was, oh, you sell this stuff. Yeah. Funnily enough, she's an actress, if you know what I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
She's just always so...
Every interview we, generally across the board. I don't think the only one I would actually draw up a line and say really doesn't work well, which is a bit tragic, and it really comes down to the methodology of how it was done. And again, you learn from experience with Jackie Lanes. Yeah. Unfortunately, Richard Landon, who's I haven't seen for a long time, but it's a really good friend, the structure of the way he wanted to do the video. His inexperience of this kind of thing meant that he wasn't looking at it from the point of view of the actual point of it is a conversation. It is not shooting it in a certain way. The moment you sacrifice what essentially any interview is and lose the conversation because of what you're trying to do to make it work, then you're losing the point of it. And that's what happened with Jackie. That would have been a really good interview if it had just been Jackie and Nick sitting down chatting, or walking and talking and chatting. But because Richard was doing all of this thing where he wanted them to be in the TARDIS and keying stuff, it just destroyed the structure of it as an interview. And I'm not happy with it, but at least there is an interview with Jackie.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in it. It just doesn't flow, does it?
No.
It's not like a proper conversation. And this going through them all, like, I'm not really negative in the book about anything because there's no need to be. But
No, you're not going to be negative now.
no. And here's what I really think. No, it was. But if something isn't working, it's about trying to find out why it doesn't work, not just going, well, that's rubbish, you know?
Learn from the experience.
And there was only a handful of ones where I was like, I'm not sure that works, or, you know, but generally it's like, I mean, I wrote it to celebrate these things, not to take the mickey out of them or be mean about it, because, as I said, they are the history of Doctor Who all in one place, like a huge archive, and I think that should be celebrated.
Absolutely. Has anyone got any questions?
I was gonna say, anybody want to ask any of us anything?
There's a question over there, yeah.
Keith, what's coming up? What have you got sort of short-term plan and what that long-term plan?
Well, Anastasia and I have got to finish some Greek language programming that we just... And my wife is Greek Cypriot, and we do Greek programming in the Greek world, which she's won awards for. And we've got two things we want to finish on... the railways that used to run in Cyprus, and also the Lourdes of Cyprus, which is a place called Apostolos Andreas. So we want to get those done. So I'm going to take a bit of time out and get that done. I need a break. I think if you just keep relentlessly doing one thing, it can slowly grind you down. And sometimes you just need a break, and I feel I need that. We've got... contentiously, Ian Levine's Mythmakers to put out at some point. Yeah, I know, yeah.
If the remit of Mythmakers is to document and record all aspects of fandom and Doctor Who and every element of it, then Ian is one of the most worthy people that could be talked to. Because it's a viewpoint and opinion that nobody else has, and yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And he also was involved in Doctor Who in a very pivotal
was
side.
indeed. I interviewed Ian for the book because he worked on Downtime.
Yeah.
And Ian's got a certain reputation, but he was very nice and very sincere. Like, when he's not having one of his rants that he has online, like, there's good stuff in there to get out of him. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that one, because there is a story to be told there.
And I think, not wishing to get into conversation about Ian, but one thing that is undeniable in Ian is that he loves Doctor Who. He adores it. He just sometimes doesn't know how to present that love. So we'll leave it at that for now. So we've got Ian Levine's Mythmakers. We've got Neil's one to put out. We've also got Rob Alsop's, and I've got a couple of other bits and pieces. We have the next Doctor on display about the USA tour to come out, which I love this production. It's just different, and you guys don't know anything about it, which is wonderful. It's the complete new piece.
Is that the one we did that I helped you out with a bit?
Sorry.
If it's the American one, is that we went and visited somebody? Is that one?
Excuse us, who do we visit? Oh, yes, we did a bit with Janet for it, yes. No, we can say.
Yeah, but I just thought that's quite a good thing
Yeah.
to mention.
Yes, we interviewed Janet because Janet Fielding did the American USA tour with Sarah Sutton during that period when it was, and Sylvester did his first appearance on the USA tour when he literally had just been cast. I don't know if he'd actually shot anything at that point. Certainly not been seen on screen.
And it's an interview that was for something about promoting.
Yes.
What this thing was, Janet was really frank about everything, because she said things like, "Oh, I did quite a lot of it," and she says, "I did more than my share."
Yeah.
She says, "Because I wasn't working at it." She said, "I wasn't getting anywhere," so she was quite open about it.
She's always been brutally honest.
I was going through a period where I was trying to act and I wasn't getting any work, and she says, and Patty Troughton had been booked on those things.
That's right.
And had died.
Yeah.
There was slots to be filled that obviously weren't going to be. Part wasn't going to do them, obviously. And Janet said, and I took more than my fair share, because if they asked me, I'd say yes, because it was work. She was really open and honest about it. Oh, yeah, it was really... She put the effort in.
She did. She always does that. That was a lovely day.
Yeah, it was.
Apart from when we were in the cafe and people kept coming, leaving the door open when the draft was coming through, and she was getting really irritated.
That was a Mythmakers.
Oh. The update.
The update, yeah.
It's in the book.
It's in the book.
Yeah. When it was when we did the one about the dog for the documentary, that was when we went to the cafe,
all the other...
and we met the dog who only bites perverts.
Anyway, there's the other one. the other one that's coming up, and the last sort of big production from a documentary point of view that I have here that I want to do, is a history of PBS in America. So, as most of you know, who sort of know the details of it all, when Doctor Who in classic Doctor Who was being shown in America, the way that PBS stations raised money was to have pledge drives. So they'd have one or two each station all over the country individually would have an evening where fans would man phones and people would pledge money to the television station to be able to show Doctor Who, because most PBS stations, although they had grant from the government, they didn't actually have enough money to run the stations and have all the programming. So they got into this thing where they would raise money by having pledge drives. So that's a documentary I really want to do. And that's one of the ones in the next year or so that will get done. 2 more dramas I would like to make. Anomaly, most of you probably heard of it. It's still the next one I want to do. And we have the rights to do a story based on Stones of Blood. Signed that long before... Who was the writer?
David Fisher.
Yes, before he passed away. We signed for that. And that's one I really want to do as well, because that will be... I'm going to try and make that a real horror story. So, because I think Stones of Blood, the concept behind it, can be turned into that kind of narrative. But apart from that, nothing else that I've really got that I want to do. Yeah. I might retire one day. You never know.
I've got time for more questions. 2 minutes we've got.
Oh,
Come on.
Go.
Talk of independent dramas, what's happening with Mind Game?
again, I'm having to wait on somebody to do the animations because I can't afford to pay a big fee. So I need all the episodes. The new structure for the episodes is all cut, all been dumped up to HD. But I need these little animation. They're not little. There's some nice big new chunky bits of animation to go in, CGI to go in. It will happen. I just don't know when, but it will.
Okay.
Dylan, any ideas for any future books?
I've got a couple. There's, it's hard to say it. I would like to do something on the cancellation of the show, centering around. Which one? The first one, but centering on how fandom perceived it and how the press perceived it, which I've got a huge collection of fanzines and things, and it's sort of opinion pieces from those times that I want to try and weave into something, but I won't know whether it'll work until I write it.
And then you can write a sequel.
Well,
Dylan, I've seen your Myth-Making collection. Which ones hadn't you seen? What?
I've probably seen about 60% of them, but there were a few that I hadn't seen before. And
A big surprise when watching those newer ones to you.
I know what you're going to say.
Jack Pitt?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jack Pitt is a story to be believed. And there's nothing actually said in it, but it's what's sort of inferred about his relationship with William Hartnell that is like... It's
Well, not intending to be salacious. When Anastasia and I went down to do this, we'll wrap on this. When Anastasia and I went down to interview him, it was for the William Hartnell tribute because I'd actually met him or got to know him when we were going to do I Was a Doctor Who Monster because he played monsters. You know, he was filled up costumes in the Hartnell stories, and we couldn't get him up to the studio, and we couldn't get him up for the day when we filmed at Riverside, when we did I Was Doctor Who Monster. But I kept his name on file. And I don't remember... Oh, you see, when we were then going to do the William Hartnell tribute, I remembered him, and I contacted him. And he said, well, I'm not going to come to London, but you're welcome to come down to Cornwall if you want to interview me. So we went down to where he lived, at St Ives or somewhere down there, just to do an interview, you know, to 10, 15, 20 minutes to go into the William Hartnell tribute tape because he'd already told me that he'd shared digs with William in London. But an hour and a half, 2 hours later, having him, you know, chatting to him and everything, we left, and Anastasia and I said to each other, you know, this is worth a Mythmakers on its own. And the inference from the conversation, and there's no way of, and this sounds, I don't want it to sound salacious, but the general thrust of the comment, remember, this is from him, this is not from anyone else, but was that they had had a relationship while William was in London. But I never, in the editing, made a point of it. Never made a conclusion from it. The inference is for people to draw from that. But it's certainly what he gave us that belief. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But it was surprising.
Yeah, it's well worth searching
quick.
out.
Really quick one. If you could watch one Mythmakers before you die, which will...
Who, me?
Gosh.
Oh, I don't know. Ian Master's pretty good.
Yeah, Ian's not bad. Louise Jameson, because I love that one.
Yeah, just because Matthew's in the building and it was the first one I did, and Matthew will get up me if he finds out I said somebody else. Matthew watching it.
Jack Pitt.
Right down.
A big Whooverville fan. We're up to Barnfather, Robert Dick, and Dylan Reese.
Too hot for TV.
That's it for this time. Thanks once again to Steve Hatcher and the Hoovers for letting us record the panel and for putting on such a brilliant event. And if you haven't been to a Whooverville event and you're in the UK, then you should head along next year. Thanks again to Richie Morgan, who cleaned up the audio and recorded the audio for us. And thanks to Robert Dick, Steve Hatcher and Keith Barnfather. The book, Doctor Who, Myths and Legends, The Real-Time Story, is available from the Telos website and anywhere else you might pick up your books. Next time, I'll be joined by Ross from the General Witchfinders, and we're going to be looking at 2 Big Finish stories featuring the meddling monk, The Secret Histories featuring the 5th Doctor, and Subterfuge featuring the 7th Doctor. But until then, I've been Dylan, and this has been Doctor Who Too Hot for TV.
Doctor Who. Too hot for TV.